Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about the game Villainous Vikings. I believe this came out in 2014, and if I remember correctly, that's when I got it. I think that was actually the last BGG con that I attended, and I think that's where I got this at. I'm pretty sure that's where I got this at. So anyway, let's get started with setup, and then we'll do how to play afterwards. First thing you'll do is assemble the board. It's one of those puzzle boards, which I don't particularly care for. I'm not sure why Victory Point Games, I guess just maybe it was cheap to make these. And this one doesn't quite lay flat anymore. I can't remember if it did when I first got it, but anyway, it works. So you assemble your board and put it in the middle of the play area. Each player will select one of the long ship standees and the associated shield token. The standee is placed in the Northlands area on the map. I'm going to be playing a 3-player game, so I will place standees for the 3 players in the Northlands area. You'll also place these tokens, the Conquest Legacy, Trade Network, Gold Hoarder, and Trade and Pillage tokens up here in the Northlands area on the map. And we'll talk about what those are for later. Each player then takes the long ship cards that create their ship and assemble them in front of them with the section for the white dice on the left, the gray in the middle, and the red on the right. So I've done that for my blue player, green player, and red player. Players will then each choose a captain to be the captain of their ship. Now you can let the players choose those themselves or assign them randomly, however you want to do that. There's a variety of captains. I even have 2 of these Ernie, Board Game Geek Ernie mascots. Those of you that have been around and on the Board Game Geek website for a long time will remember Ernie used to be the mascot, and for some political correctness reasons of some such, they got rid of him and just turned him into an orange icon. But anyway, he used to be the Board Game Geek mascot, and at that BGG Con 2014, they gave out these promo cards. I'm not going to use those. I'll just use the regular captains that came with the normal game. So we'll just randomly assign Bjorn Ironsides here to the blue player, Ivar the Boneless to the green player, and Lagertha to the red player. And then the rest of these will just be put back in the box. Next, you'll prepare the Journey deck, which is made up of 3 decks, Age 1, Age 2, and Age 3. One of the Age 3 cards will be the Ragnarok card, and you'll just set that aside. Then you'll shuffle each of these decks separately. Then, depending on the number of players, you'll use a certain amount of cards out of each deck. In a 3-player game, we'll use 8 Age 1 cards, 8 Age 2, and 10 Age 3. So let me get those set aside. So here I've got my 8 Age 1, 8 Age 2, 8 Age 3. Any cards that were not dealt out are just put back in the box. If you were playing a 4-player game, you would have 10 Age 1, 10 Age 2, and 12 Age 3. And if you were playing a 5-player game, you would have 12 Age 1, 12 Age 2, and 14 Age 3. But again, we're playing 3 players, so it's 8, 8, and 10. You'll then take 3 of the Age 3 cards and shuffle your Ragnarok card in with those 3. Alright, so I've shuffled the Ragnarok card in with the other 3 Age 3 cards. So you know the Ragnarok card is one of the bottom 4 Age 3 cards. Then you'll stack the rest of your Age 3 cards on top. Stack your Age 2 cards on top of that. And finally your Age 1 cards on top of that. And just put those near the player board. You then create your journey pool by dealing out a number of cards from the journey deck equal to the number of players plus 2. So in a 3-player game, that'll be 5 cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, you determine a first player, but by whatever means you choose. Suggest maybe in the manual doing it by beard length. I'm just going to do blue as my first player and then goes clockwise from that. So left, my next around the table would be red and my last player will be green. Once you've determined your player order, you'll place their shield markers on the gold track, starting with the first player, who is blue for me. Will start with 0 gold. My second player is red, and they will start with 2 gold. And finally, my third player is green, and they will start with 4 gold. And if a player ever gets more than 30 gold, they would start back here and just flip their token over, which says plus 30 on the other side, and then go back up. But that is it. We're all set up. There are some dice, and if it's the first time you've played, you got to put the stickers on the dice, but otherwise just set those somewhere near the board. And we're set up and ready to go. Alright, on a player's turn, he can perform 2 actions, and that can be 2 different actions or the same action twice. So let's talk about the possible actions. One action is just to move your ship to any region on the board. So you can see these different locations here with the ship on them. Those are different regions that are on the board. And the locations up here in the journey pool correspond to the different regions. So here, the Hamburg location, you could interact with that location card in the journey pool if you're here in this region. This Terebinthus is located in this region here. Armagh, I'm not sure how you say that, would be located in this region here, and so forth. So when you go to a region that matches one of the location cards in the pool, then you can interact with that card. But anyway, so one action you can take is to move. So from the Northlands to here, or if you're here, you could move to here, or if you're here, you could move back to the Northlands. So moving to a region or to the Northlands is one action. If you are in a region that matches a location card, one of the actions you can do then is use a location card. So here this player could, since there's a card in the journey pool that corresponds to this region, they could try to use this location card. So there are several things you can do with the location card. You can try to conquer it, raid it, or trade with that location. Well, actually, you can't raid a location that's in the journey pool. You can raid a location that another player already has in their play area. We'll talk about that in a minute. So let's first talk about if you wanted to conquer this location. So first, if you decide you're going to try to conquer that location, first you'll have to have battle with it. Now, you get to roll for each of your undamaged section of your ship. So in this case, if your ship is fully undamaged, you get to roll 1 white, 1 gray, and 1 red dice. Then you look at the location you're attacking, and you'll see up here the dice that they get to roll. So here Hamburg also gets to roll a white, a gray, or a red dice, where if you were attacking Terebinthus here, they would only roll one gray dice. Now there are some other icons to pay attention to on these location cards. This here, these crossed swords and the name here, shows that there is a warrior that goes along with this location that will also be involved in the battle. It will try to protect its location. So if you were going to attack that, you would need to find that card from your warrior deck. So let's do that. So one thing I skipped or missed in the setup is there is a warrior deck with warriors that go along with some of the regions. So for instance here in the Francia region, we're looking for Ansgar because he goes along with this location. So you look here, there's Ansgar. So we can just put him up above that location. Now he will contribute his static abilities to the defense of this location, and if you conquer this location, you can take him and add him to your ship, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But currently, so if you were attacking this location, it would get to roll 3 dice, and it would get these static abilities. This type of warrior is called a hero. There's also some warriors you can see by this icon that has a little gold icon. That's a mercenary. That type of warrior will not fight for its location, but you can pay that warrior to join your ship, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute. There's also some locations have no warrior at all. You can see how these have the icon that they've got a warrior that will help defend. This one has no warrior at all. There's also another type of warrior, which is a sovereign, which we'll see like here. It has the little skull icon, and they will defend. They're very strong. They'll defend their location, and if you end up capturing the location, they will not join your crew. They'll fight to the death. But if you end up capturing the location, they are worth Valhalla points at the end. Alright, so let's talk more about how a battle would work. So if you were going to attack this location, we talked about it would roll those 3 dice. You would roll dice for each undamaged location of your ship. And then you'll see the dice have swords on them. So you'll total your swords. Some have hammers, and you will look at your leader to see, for this is a gray hammer, so it would trigger this ability, which would add 2 swords to your attack. He has a static ability of 2 swords in explored regions, and I'll explain more about what explored regions are here in a little bit. There's also a possibility of shields, and that reduces damage you'll take after the battle. That is pretty much it. Some have a combination. So anyway, let's just go ahead and roll and see what we get here. And I'm going to use this little ship dice tray that my daughter made for me years ago. Anyway, so remember, he gets to roll a white, a gray, and a red. And he got 1 sword, 2 swords, and he got his gray hammer, heathen hammer. These are called heathen hammer abilities. So that's 2 more swords. So he gets 2, 4, 5 swords. Now the location also gets to roll a white, gray, and red dice, so we'll roll for them. The player to the right of the player who's actually attacking the location rolls for the location. So in this example, he ended up rolling 3 hammers. Now, unless there's a sovereign involved in the battle, the hammers don't have heathen hammer abilities. So when location rolls hammers, they count as 2 swords each. So in this case, the location would have rolled 2, 4, 6 swords, plus 1 for its hero that's defending it, as long as he's in the Frankia region, which he is. So a total of 7 swords against the 5 swords that this player rolled. So in this case, the player would have lost this combat, because it's the more total swords that you have wins the combat. But I want to show what would happen if you did win the combat, so I'm just going to do a different roll and say this is what he got. So now in this case, he got 1 sword. The shields really don't matter anything for locations, plus the 1 sword for its hero. So 2 swords against the 5 swords of the attacking player, so the location loses. Now, the location did do 2 points of 2 swords of damage. This player rolled no shields, so he doesn't get to block any of that damage. So he has to take 2 points of damage. So when you're taking damage, you start from the rightmost ship card, and you'll see this one can absorb 2 points of damage. So he'll have to flip this over to its damage side. Now that's all he had, so it didn't matter. But if this player had done, say, 5 points of damage, then this one would then have to absorb the other 3 points of damage, and you would have to flip this card to its damage side. If that location had done 4 points of damage, then this one would take 2 of it, and so you would have to flip it, which would leave 2 more left over. 1, 2. Well, this one could still absorb 1 more. So because it didn't take its full damage, you just forget those other 2 damage, and this one stays flipped up. So this player takes his 2 points of damage that he got from the 2 swords that the location rolled. But now he conquered this location. So then he has a choice. He can colonize the location, taking the location card and putting it in his play area, in which case he'll get 5 gold. You look down here and he collects 5 gold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he also has this card face up in his play area. If at the end of the game when we're doing scoring, he still has this card face up in his play area, it's worth 4 Valhalla points. Also, this hero that was defending the location will now join his crew if he wants. Now, he could just discard this warrior if he doesn't want him, but if he does want him, he can put him. Each warrior has to take up 1 undamaged section of your longship. So he could assign him to this section or this section of his longship. And then in future battles, that warrior adds its static abilities for you when you're fighting either another location or another player. If you choose not to colonize the location that you successfully conquered, you can instead raise that location. If you decide to raise the location, then you don't get the choice of having the warrior. He just gets discarded. If it was a sovereign there, then you get to take that to your play area to score Valhalla points for at the end. Then you also just discard the location card, and you get 3 times the gold value, so you would get 15 gold. And if you had a damaged section of your longship, you could repair that section for free. So those are your 2 options if you successfully conquer a location, attack and conquer a location. You can either colonize it and take the location, and if there's a hero there, you can take that hero. Or you can decide to raise it, in which case you'll get, you don't take the location or the hero, you just put those in the discard pile, but you do get 3 times the gold instead of the single amount of the gold, and you can repair your longship for free. Well, one section of it for free. If two sections were damaged in the battle you had with the location, and you decide to raise it, you just repair one section for free. And you always repair from the leftmost section forward, so you would repair that one for free. Then on a future turn, we'll talk about other actions you can do that allow you to repair sections of your ship. If another player has previously conquered and colonized a location, and they have that location in their play area, and you go to the region where that location is. For instance, if the blue player went to the Francia location here, and the green player had the Hamburg location in their play area, you can try to attack that location just like if it was in the journey pool, but it would only get to roll its dice. It would not have any warrior or anything along with it. Anyway, that's called raiding the location. So you would roll against that location, and that location would just roll its dice. If you defeat the location, you collect 2 times the gold shown on that location card. Then you flip that location card face down in that player's area, and they will not receive any benefits from that card going forward unless they manage to flip it back over, which we'll talk about in a minute. And also, if you successfully raid a location, you can repair a damaged section of your long ship if you have any. If you fail to defeat the location when you're raiding it, then nothing happens other than you may have taken some damage to your long ship, but there's no other further consequence, and nothing else happens with the location. Alright, so we've talked about you can move to a region and you can try to conquer a location that's in the journey pool, or if that location is already in a player's area, you can try to raid that location. Another thing you can do is just try to trade with that location if it's still in the journey pool. Well, not try to trade, you can just trade with that location. So when you trade with a location, one of the things you can do is pay to repair your ship. So if you had one damaged section, you could pay 2 gold, subtract 2 gold from your thing, and then you can flip the section back over. If you had 2 damaged sections, you could pay just to repair one, pay 3 gold to repair this one, or if you had 5, wanted to pay 5 gold and you have it, you could pay 5 gold and repair both of them. So that's one action you could take if you're taking a trade, if you're trading in a location. Another action you could take is to hire a mercenary. So for instance, here in the Ireland region, we notice that this Armagh does have a mercenary, so we could find that warrior card, which here it is, Ireland, Seartrig Silkbeard. This is him. So that's a mercenary that's available. So if you trade with that location instead of attacking it, you could hire for 2 gold Sigtrig Silkbeard, and then he could join any undamaged location ship card that does not already have a warrior in it. And then that would add that warrior's abilities. This one gives you a static ability of 1 extra sword if you're fighting in Ireland. If you were just attacking this location, a mercenary does not add its static ability for the location. They don't fight for the location like a hero does. And if you attack and defeat that location and you hadn't previously hired that mercenary, he was still there for hire, then he's just discarded. He does not join your ship at that time. And the other possible action you could do if you're just trading with the location instead of attacking it is just collect Danegeld, in which case you just collect the amount of gold shown on that location card. And you could do that, if you were already in that location, you could do that 2 times. Collect Danegeld, get 2 gold. Collect Danegeld again to get 2 gold. You could spend both your actions to do that. So again, when you're trading, you can do each one of those things as one action. You could hire a mercenary or collect Danegeld or repair a section of your ship or repair your ship as an action. Okay, so to reiterate, we've talked about you could move your ship as an action to a region. You could use a location card in the journey pool to either try to conquer it or use a location card in somebody's player area to either try to raid it, or use a location card in the journey pool to trade with it and do one of the possible trade actions as one of your actions. Another possible action you could do is interact with the gods via an Asgard card. Now there's no Asgard cards in our journey pool right now, but there are some in the there will be some in your journey deck that will come out. So let me just find one for an example. Alright, so if this Asgard card was in the journey pool, you could select that. And it says, you just do what it says. This one says attack a captain who has more total face-up cards of any kind than you do. You gain +2 swords for the duration of the battle. If you win the battle, take this card. And then you would take that card and put it in your play area, and then you'd have this sacrifice ability. Well, we haven't talked about sacrifice abilities yet, so let's do that more. That's takes place in the battle. We went over battle a little bit, but we didn't go into sacrificing or the sacrifice ability. So we'll say this player, has he's got this warrior attached to his ship, and then he's conquered these locations, and he's got this Asgard card. Well, as we talked about earlier when we were talking about battling a location, the first thing you'll do is roll your dice. If your ship is at full strength, you get to roll a white, a gray, and a red. If this section was damaged and you were in a battle, then you would only get to roll a white and a gray. If this section was damaged and you were in a battle, then you only get to roll a white. So both sides, either if you're attacking a location or if you're attacking another player, you both roll your dice and see what results you get. If you have Heathen Hammer abilities, then you get to add those, plus whatever your static ability is. So after both sides have rolled their dice and added the static abilities from any warriors or their captain and their Heathen Hammer abilities, you at that point determine who has more swords. Whoever has the less amount of swords can then decide if they want to sacrifice. You can sacrifice up to one of your warriors for its sacrifice ability. You can sacrifice up to one of your locations for its sacrifice ability. And you can sacrifice up to one Asgard card for its sacrifice ability. So, for instance, if this player was battling another player and after their rolls he was losing by 2 swords, he could use this warrior's sacrifice ability, so sacrifice during battle to steal 1 warrior from your opponent's crew and add it to your own, then recalculate the battle total. So that's something he could do. Whenever you sacrifice something, you're going to end up losing it. So, for instance, if he chose to sacrifice this guy to use his sacrifice ability, he would just set it aside, like maybe at the front of his ship, to mark that he's sacrificing it. Now he would still get its static ability, and then he would add to it whatever his sacrifice ability. So you can do up to one warrior. You can also do one location and one Asgard card. So maybe instead of sacrificing this warrior, he would sacrifice this Asgard card because its sacrifice ability is 3 swords. Now, if you don't sacrifice it and have it at the end of the game, it's going to be worth 3 Valhalla points. But if you're losing a battle and you need the swords, you can sacrifice it, then you'll get those swords. Of course, then your opponent, if you sacrifice, then your opponent then has the opportunity where they can sacrifice either up to one warrior, one location, or one Asgard card from their side. But remember, anything you sacrifice after that battle is going to be discarded. So this card would be discarded after he sacrificed it. And if you sacrifice a location, for its sacrifice ability, like this one gives you 2 swords, or this one lets you get a gray heathen hammer ability. Again, if you were going to sacrifice that, you'd put it over here, use it to calculate for that battle. But then this is going to be discarded, so you'll be losing 3 Valhalla points you would have had. And this is going to be discarded, so you'll be losing those 3 Valhalla points. You can also, in battle, besides sacrificing to get more swords, you can also buy swords for 5 gold. So for every 5 gold you spend, you can buy 1 sword. So once both players have sacrificed any or all things that they can, remember you can only sacrifice up to 1 warrior, 1 location, and 1 event card per battle. But you can purchase as many swords as you want. But after both sides have done any sacrificing and purchasing that they want to do, then the winner is whoever has the most swords. Now, if you're battling a location, locations don't get to sacrifice or buy swords. They get whatever they roll, plus if they have a hero or sovereign guarding them, they get whatever abilities they have. But otherwise, locations don't get to sacrifice or buy swords. Only if you're fighting another player, then they get to sacrifice cards that they have and buy swords with their gold. And so whoever has the most swords, as we've talked about, wins the battle. But, of course, you then have to, no matter if you won the battle or not, however many swords were played against you, you subtract any shields that you rolled or that you have from static abilities. For instance, this guy has 1 shield as a static ability. So you subtract shields that you rolled or you have from abilities from the total number of swords that were rolled against you. Any swords left over, you then have to damage your ship depending, as I showed earlier, how many damage you have yet to take. So if you only had 1 sword left over after you've subtracted shields, you wouldn't have to damage anything because it takes at least 2 to damage this. So if you had 2, you'd have to damage this. If you had a total of 5, you'd have to damage this section. If all 3 of your sections of your longship are damaged, then you just automatically lose the battle. You move your ship back to the Northlands. You lose half your gold. If you were fighting another player and they survived, they receive the half of the gold that you lost, they get. You have to discard 1 of your location cards. So of any location cards you have face up in your play area, you have to discard 1 of them. And then finally you would flip the leftmost section of your longship back to the undamaged side. Another thing I should talk about is I mentioned you can assign warriors if you get warriors from defeating other locations, heroes. You can assign them to a section of your ship, so you can have up to 3. If a section of your ship that has an assigned warrior gets destroyed, then you can move that location that warrior to another free section if there is one available. If a section gets destroyed and there is no other free section, then that warrior is just discarded. Then you've lost him. And I should mention, if your ship was full, you had 3 warriors already assigned to 3 sections, and you were to acquire another warrior, you could replace one of your current warriors with the newly acquired one and then just discard the old one, or you just discard the new one. But you can never have more than 1 warrior assigned to a section of your longship. Couple of other things to mention about battles. If you're battling a location, locations win all ties. So if you tied in the amount of swords, the location would actually win. And then you would not acquire the location, obviously. However, if 2 players are fighting, Vikings don't tie. So if after rolling your dice and doing sacrifices and purchasing swords or whatever, you're tied, then you'll just discard all your sacrifice cards, take any damage to your ship that you would take from the swords that were applied to it, and then you would refight another battle rolling again, where you could then sacrifice other warriors or locations or Asgard cards that you had. So you would continue doing that until there's a victor. So the 2 Viking players cannot tie. And whoever loses a battle between 2 players has to move their ship to the Northlands. Even if it's not sunk, even if they only damaged 1 section, if they lost the battle, they have to move their ship to the Northlands, unless that battle occurred because of an Asgard card that said, battle another captain. Then the loser doesn't have to move back to the Northlands. If during the battle between 2 captains, 2 Viking players, both players' ships are sunk, then they both have to move their ships to the Northlands and lose a location card, and they both lose half their gold, but the other player does not receive, neither player receives any gold. So we haven't talked about what might cause 2 Viking players, 2 captains to battle each other. Well, 2 captains can never be in the same region. So for instance, if this red player was here in the Francia region and the green player decided to move there, they would put their ship here. And then because 2 players can never be in the same region, the red player then has the choice of they can retreat. If the player decides to retreat, they have to lose 2 gold per undamaged section of their longship. So if your longship was full, then you would have to lose 6 gold, or all your gold if you have less than the amount required. Now if he had 2 damaged sections and he decided to retreat, then he would only have to pay 2 gold because it's 2 gold per undamaged section of your ship. But anyway, you pay 2 gold per undamaged section of your ship, and then you go back to the Northlands. And then this player would move into its proper spot in the region. If this player decides not to retreat, well, then there will be a battle between the 2 captains. And then the battle will play out as we talked about with battles, and the loser will have to go to the Northlands. Mentioned earlier, this guy has a static ability that says, 2 swords in explored regions. There's other cards that will mention explored regions. So if you have conquered a location and you have it in your player area, then that region is considered explored to you. So if this player had, conquered Terebinthus and took the location card, colonized it, took the location card into his player area, then he's considered to have explored the yellow region here. So if he was in a battle there, he would get 2 extra swords. And if you had conquered, this card also, then both those regions would be considered explored to you. Now, if another player were to raid one of your locations, as we talked about before, and you have to flip that card face down, then that card is no longer, or that region is no longer considered explored to you, unless you have another face-up card from that same region in your play area. One of the possible actions I forgot to mention when I was talking about a trade action, if you are in the same region, if on a previous turn or sometime during the game a player had raided one of your locations and you had to turn it face down, you can, for an action, if you are in the region of that face down location, for and for one of the actions you can do as a possible trade action is you can rebuild that colony. So you take an action and just flip that back up, and then it's you'll get Valhalla points for it in the end. Or you could sacrifice it, whatever. It just acts again like it's a normal location card in your play area. Okay, another possible action you can do on your turn is, let's say you're out here and you've got a damaged section of your ship or something. On your turn, you can use a move action to move to the Northlands, and then there's an action called Regroup in the Northlands, which basically just lets you repair one section of your ship for free. So if you had 2 damaged sections and you moved there and you took the Regroup in the Northland actions, you could repair 1 damaged section for free. You'd have to wait till you could use another action before you could repair the other damaged section for free. And one of the last actions you can take that we haven't covered is if you are in the Northlands, you can acquire one of these bonus tokens. And the requirements to acquire, it costs an action to acquire one. And the different things for this one, the Conquest Legacy, you have to have 3 different location cards in your player area from the same region. If you have that and you move to the Northlands, you can spend an action to gain that bonus token, and then at the end it's worth 5 Valhalla points, and you just put that in your play area. Now, even if later in the game you end up having to, one of your locations is raided or something and you have to turn it over, you don't lose this. Once you've gained it, you always have it, and another player can't take it from you. The other one is the Trade Network, in which you have 4 different location cards from 4 different regions in your play area, 4 unique regions. If you have that, you can move to the Northlands and spend an action to acquire that token, and that's worth 5 Valhalla points at the end. The Gold Hoarder, you have to spend 20 gold to acquire that when you're in the Northlands, and that's worth 5 Valhalla points at the end. And this one isn't one you can acquire except for at the end when you're, let me see if I can get that, scoring. The player with the lowest victory point score when Ragnarok is revealed gets this token, and it's worth 3 Valhalla points to them in final scoring. But we haven't got to that yet. So these are the 3 that you can acquire by moving to the Northlands, and doing an acquire bonus action. This one, just the person with the lowest score when Ragnarok happens gets that. Whenever you end up taking a card from the journey pool, either from an Asgard card or because you conquered a location and put it into your play area, the last thing you'll do on your turn is to replenish the journey pool by taking a card from the journey deck and filling in any cards that were taken. So those are the possible actions. Each player, again, gets to take 2 actions, and you'll continue going around like that until the Ragnarok card is revealed in the 3rd age. As soon as that card is revealed, then players will quit taking actions. So all players are then summoned for the final battle. Each player can spend gold to repair any damaged sections of their long ships if they want to. And then all the players will have a battle basically, so they'll all roll the dice they're allowed to roll depending on how many undamaged sections. They'll get to sacrifice, spend gold on swords and so forth. And so at the end of that round of battle, whoever has the lowest score is out of the Ragnarok, and then the 2 remaining players will fight, or in a 3-player game, the 2 remaining players, if you have more players, then all the remaining players will fight another round. When you're battling in Ragnarok, your ship does not take any damage. It's just whoever has the least amount of swords is kicked out. Then the remaining players are allowed to or will fight another round, again with the player with the least amount of swords kicked out again, until finally there's only 1 remaining player. The player that wins the Ragnarok battles takes the Ragnarok card, which is worth 7 Valhalla points, and then you add up the scores from your Ragnarok card if you got that, plus your Valhalla points from all your location cards, from any event cards that you have. You get 5 Valhalla points for every gold that you have. 1 Valhalla point for every 5 gold that you have. If you happen to have any sovereign cards, you'll get Valhalla points for those. And if you have any of the bonus tokens, you add your Valhalla points for those. And the player with the most Valhalla points wins the game. If there is a tie for Valhalla points, then amongst those tied players, whichever one did better in the Ragnarok battling wins the game. So that's it. Some of that may have seemed kind of confusing, at least in my explanation. The game is actually pretty easy to play. So I think we'll do a few example turns, and that should cement it in your mind, I think. So let's get started with some example turns. Alright, everything should be back to how it was right after setup. So we'll start with the blue player taking his first turn. So for one of his actions, he will move his longship to a region. And then for another action, he will use a card there. There's one here in the pool, this Terebinthus. He's going to go ahead and attack that region, that location. They'll get to roll 1 gray dice, but they do have a hero that we need to find. So here we look at the Mediterranean region warriors. We find Savin, that's the name of their hero, so we'll put him there. He gives a static ability of 1 sword, and they get to roll 1 gray dice. So we'll roll their 1 dice. They got a hammer, so for a location that counts as 2 swords. So they have a total of 3 swords. Alright, the blue player, he has a static ability of 2 swords in explored regions. Because he doesn't have a card from this region in his play area, then it's not explored, so he doesn't get those bonuses. But he does get to roll a white, a gray, and a red dice. And he got 2 swords plus 2 heathen hammer abilities. His red one gives him 3, and his white one gives him steal up to 3 gold from opposing Viking captain. Okay, well he's not fighting that, so that's not useful. But he did get 3, 4, 5 against the 3 for the location, so he is going to win the battle. But the location did have 3 swords, so he'll have to take some damage. So 2, this will take 2 damage with 1 damage left over. With 3 Viking helms there, that's not enough to damage this section. So now he'll take this location card, put that in his play area. He will get 2 gold. And he also takes this hero, and he has the option to add him to his ship to an undamaged section. He'll add him here. And so in the future, he'll gain that static ability and have a sacrifice ability if he wants to use it. Now remember, I did have the option, instead of colonizing that location and taking it and putting it in my play area and taking that hero, I could have raised that location and instead taken 3 times the gold and discarded this location and this hero, and I would have been able to repair 1 section of my longship. But I chose to colonize. Alright, let's go on to the red player's turn. First, before the red player's turn, we do gotta replace a card in the journey pool since 1 was taken. Alright, it's the red player's turn. Lagertha. She is going to, for 1 action, she's going to move to a region. She'll move here to the Ireland region, and she will do trade there instead of attacking. So there's 2 Ireland locations, but she's going to do a trade in this location and hire this mercenary for 2 gold. So she's got to pay 2 gold, and she gets to hire this mercenary. Oh, sorry, I moved the wrong thing. I'm doing Lagertha. She should be down here. She gets to hire this mercenary and add him to her ship, and that will be her second action. Now that doesn't remove a card from the journey pool, so there's no cards that need to be replaced. So now we'll go to the green player, Ivar the Boneless. Alright, I think Ivar's going to go here and try to conquer this location and colonize it and acquire that hero. So he's going to move for 1 action. He's going to move there. For his second action, he's going to use a location card, this one in Hamburg, and he's going to try to conquer it. So he rolls a white, gray, and red dice. Now he has a static ability of +1 sword versus locations, and during Ragnarok, well, this is location, so he gets +1 sword. So that's 3 plus the 1 he has, so 4 swords and 1 shield. Alright, the location gets to also roll a white, gray, and red dice, and it has a static ability from this hero of +1. The shield doesn't really matter for the location, but it will. This guy will give +1 sword in his defense of that location. So we'll roll now for the location. It gets 4 plus the 1 sword from the hero, so 5. 5 versus the 4 over here. He doesn't really have enough gold to pay for another sword, and that would only let him tie. So he doesn't have anything to sacrifice currently, so he's gonna lose. And because he took 5 hits, he does have 1 shield, so that blocks 1, so he'll take 4. So there's 2 helmets here that will take 2 of the damage. He'll have to damage that section of the ship, but then there's only 2 more swords left, so that's not enough to damage the second section of the ship. And so the card will remain in the journey pool, and he just receives nothing. Alright, so now we're back to the blue player's turn. Now he's got a damaged ship. He could do because he's in the Mediterranean, well, there's not a card there for him to do a trade action with. Now, there is a house rule that the designer has agreed with that if you have a location card in your play area for the region that you're in, that you could do a trade action with that location. But since that's not in the rule book, I'm not going to play that way. So I'll just say he can't do a trade action currently because there's not a Mediterranean card up there in the journey pool. So I'll have him for one action. He's going to move back to the Northlands, and for his second action, he'll do regroup in the Northlands where he can repair one section of his ship for free. And so that's what he'll do for his two actions. Alright, back to the red player, Lagertha. Alright, for her first action, she's still here in Ireland. She's going to go ahead and attack this region, Armagh, try to conquer it. So she gets a white, gray, and red dice, and because she has this hero and he gets +1 sword in Ireland, and that's where she is, she'll have +1 sword. So she's going to roll. Alright, she got 1 sword. She got a gray heathen hammer ability, which is 2 swords, so that's 3. Then she got a sword and a shield, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the 1 this guy has for his static ability. So 5 total swords for her. And she has a static ability that doubles the number of shields rolled on combat dice in battle, so this will count as 2 shields. Now the location only gets to roll 1 red dice, so it gets a 2 against 5, so the location loses, and because her shields count as 2, that blocks both those sword damage, so she doesn't have to damage any section of her ship. And of course now she has the option to colonize that location and take it and put it in her play area, or she could raise it and take 3 times the gold. She'll go ahead and colonize it. So she'll take that, put it in her play area. She gets 2 gold. 1, 2. And then she will replace the journey card. Now this Mediterranean version has a this location, Seville, has a sovereign for its protector, so that'll be a little harder to conquer for sure. Alright, we're back to the green player. Because there is a location card, he could choose to trade there and repair a section of his ship for a cost of 2 gold. And so I think that's what he's going to do. So he will trade, repair a section of his ship for a cost of 2 gold. But then, now, it was 1 action. Now for his second action, he's going to try to conquer this location. Oh no, that's not the right color. He would have to fight that one again. So, I'm not sure. I think he's going to move to the England region there. There is a card that he can try to get in the future. So that's going to end his turn. Now we're back to blue. I'm going to play ahead until I get to something that we haven't seen. Alright, I wanted to show something here. Lagertha is here in Ireland. She's attacking the Annagassan location here. They've both rolled already. She received 1, 2, plus she receives 1 from her mercenary since she's in Ireland, so she has a total of 3. The location just rolled a red and a gray. Remember the locations, the heathen hammer counts as 2, plus this red gives it 1 and a shield, so it has a total of 3. So they're tied right now, and locations win ties, so she wants to beat it. So she's going to go ahead and use this mercenary's sacrifice ability, which gives her 1 extra sword. So she'll have a total of 4. The 1, 2 there, his static ability, and now his sacrifice ability. So she's going to win with 4. Now she does have to take 3 damage, so that's 2 right there, and then 1 more. She needed 3 more to damage this section, so this section won't be damaged. She does have to discard this warrior since she sacrificed him, and then she will colonize and take this card. Now she has 3 Ireland cards, so she'll be wanting to move back to the Northlands to claim that Conquest Legacy bonus here in a minute. And she also gains the 3 gold for that location. Now thinking back on it, Lagertha rolled a white heathen hammer, which is if you're the victor in the battle, you take no losses, so she would not actually have had to damage that section of her ship. Alright, so this will be something we haven't seen. Green wants to go to the Ireland location so that he can battle red. So he's going to, for one action, he's going to move there. Now, because 2 captains can't be in the same location, that's going to automatically initiate a battle. So red does have the option to retreat to the Northlands, but she doesn't want to do that. Lagertha doesn't want to do that, so they'll have a battle. So we'll have green go ahead and roll first. They get to roll a white, gray, and red, and that's not good. 2 shields and a red heathen hammer gives 3 swords. Alright, Lagertha also gets to roll all 3 dice, and she got 2, 3, 4 swords. But green had acquired this Asgard card earlier when I was playing off camera, so he's going to sacrifice that to add 3 more swords, so that's going to give him a total of 6 versus Lagertha's 4. Lagertha could sacrifice this location, and that would give her 2 more, which would make it a tie, and then they'd have to discard their sacrifice cards, take damage, and roll again, but she doesn't want to do that. She'll go ahead and just take the loss, so he's got to discard this card because he sacrificed it. They both have to take damage now. So Ivar has to take 4 damage, but he had 2 shields, so he only takes 2 damage. And Lagertha took 6 damage, but she did roll a shield, and she has that static ability that doubles the number of shields that she rolled. So she has 2 shields, so minus the from the 6 damage leaves her with 4 damage, so she'll have to reduce that section, and that leaves 2 damage left, which is not enough to damage this section. And because Lagertha lost, she has to retreat to the Northlands, and so he'll get to move. The green player, Ivar the Boneless, will get to move in there. Now, that was the green player, Ivar the Boneless, first action was to move there, and then the battle was initiated because they were both there, so he still has another action. He does not want Lagertha to get the bonus for having the 3, to be able to acquire that Conquest Legacy bonus for having the 3 cards in Ireland. So for his second action, he's going to do a raid on one of the locations in her area, and he's going to do it against Armagh there. So he gets to roll only, because he's damaged, he's only going to get to roll a white and a gray dice, but he does have +1 sword versus locations. So he's going to get to roll the white and the gray, He got 2 heathen hammers, so he got a white one, which gives him +1. And a gray one gives him 2, so that's 3 plus his 1 there. So he has a total of 4 swords versus this location, which just gets to roll 1 dice. So 2 swords. So he wins because he was raiding this location and it lost. It's got to be flipped over. Now the location did get 2 damage, but that's not enough to damage his section. Now for successfully raiding the location, he gets 2 times the gold, so he gets 4 gold from that location. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And he gets to repair a section of his ship for free, so he'll do that. Anyway, I think I'll stop there. You can see pretty much how the game plays. And you'll just keep playing until you get to the Ragnarok card, and then you'll have a battle, as I said, between all the players, where all of them will battle, and whoever gets the lowest amount of swords after sacrificing and buying swords is out of the battle, and then the remaining 2 would battle again, and then whoever lost that battle would be out, and the winner would get the Ragnarok card, and then you would add up Valhalla points. So that's it. I think it's a pretty fun game. I've yet to play it with anyone else. I've just played it by myself several times, playing it as 3 players and playing each player to their best of their ability. And it works out pretty good. I mean, there's no official solo mode, but you can play it like that. There's no hidden information or anything. So it's still possible to play solo. But I'm sure it would be more fun playing against other players. Anyway, I do enjoy this game. The rule book is a little, I don't know. I think it's just not organized great. I think most of the rules are in there. I think just the organization makes it kind of hard to learn from. But it's not too hard to learn. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't really like these puzzle boards, and there are some abilities on the cards and for the captains and stuff that are maybe don't spell out exactly how they work, and I've had to look them up, do a search on the Board Game Geek forums for this game to figure some stuff out. But overall, I enjoyed the game. I don't think Victory Point Games is around anymore, so you'd probably have to pick up a used copy of this game if you wanted it. I think somebody should pick it up and reprint it. Anyway, this video's gone on long enough. I better wrap it up. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.